Hello everybody, good evening. We're going live once again. The topic of this live will be alcohol is also a drug. And we'll be hearing some comments from our participants, Gracie Santoro, founder of the collective Alcoolismo Feminino, or feminine alcoholism, Sabrina Presman, psychologist who specializes in chemical dependency, Roberto Flores, one of the oldest chemical dependency counselors in Brazil, and Duca Pantaleão, a comedian and from a personal point of view, a recovering alcoholic. We were live before but had some technical difficulties, so I'm going to start over. I hope that you will be patient and understanding. So I'll be bringing Gracie on now. These things happen, right? When we are live, we control practically nothing. Hey Gracie, we're back. There was a little issue, but we're back. So you were talking about the problem of being in denial, right? Which is very important regarding alcoholism and chemical dependency as a whole. And you suffered quite a lot because of that in terms of alcoholism, because you were in denial, right? You have the floor now. Yes, well, since alcohol is a illicit drug and is so widely accepted, socially speaking, since I was a kid, I grew up surrounded by all types of beverages. My family always drank a lot. It was a family of Europeans who drank a lot. I even had a cousin who actually died drinking perfume, drinking isopropyl alcohol, which is the one we use now and is such a hot topic right now. So to me, alcohol is one of the worst, and maybe the worst drug, because it is the door that leads you to other drugs. But I didn't have that vision. To me, an alcoholic was a homeless person who did nothing but beg and drink around. So I didn't have that vision, especially being a woman. So for many years, every time I drank, even as a teenager, I think I've said this before, I could drink once a month, but I drank a lot. I always drank a lot, wasn't able to stop. And that progressed, right? Because alcoholism is a progressive disease. The syndrome or disorder is progressive. And when I separated from my husband, I was around 29, 30 years old. I began to drink a lot, more and more every day. I had two small daughters. One of them was 4 or 5 years old, and the other one was 2. And I really started worshipping alcohol. I began to drink Wednesday through Sunday, sometimes Wednesday through Saturday, and on Sunday I tried to restrain myself from doing it, but for me it was already very hard to stop. I started suffering amnesia and I interacted with other people who had the same issue, but in a more advanced stage. Because that way I could still deny I had a problem even more. I said to myself, I drink beer. He drinks whiskey and even mixes it with other drugs. So I don't have a problem, he has a problem, right? So I kept making excuses and interacting with those people in a more advanced stage. I experienced violence and abuse. I abandoned my little girls. I truly idolized alcohol and did everything it took to be able to drink. I even managed to move back to my mother's to leave my girls with her so I could go on drinking. And always making excuses, Oh, but I'm separated, I cannot take care of my kids on my own, being a divorced mom and all. My mom bought my story and I went out to drink while she took care of my daughters. You stop me when my time is up, okay? Because I talk a lot. No, it's okay. You still have a few minutes. Okay, so yeah. I had already been through a very difficult situation involving physical violence, in which my daughter saw me. I got home pretty bruised and completely drunk. And that same week, my mom came to me and said, look, you're going to look for help or else I will kick you out. And just to summarize, I went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And in there, I went through a spiritual awakening. I was lucky enough to meet 4 other women who really, really helped me. And that is something very rare. That is why we founded the collective, because one of the things, now getting into the story of the collective, one of the things that was hurting me during all those years of recovery, and I want to make it very clear, I am extremely grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it is an organization that has saved my life and the life of so many. But it was hard for me to talk at the meetings regarding sexual issues or very intimate matters. And I saw that many women went there but didn't stay. In the meetings I went, 90% were men. And since the groups are independent, some of them even have what we could call group owners, and they do things the way they think best. And there is a lot of prejudice. We already live in a very sexist society, and we are born basically with a huge burden on our shoulders as women. Being an alcoholic is even worse because we are ashamed and suffer prejudice even from other women. So seeing all of that inside of me, I said to myself, this is not possible. Until one day I read an article which said that the percentage of alcoholic women had increased around 40% in the last 10 years, something like that. And that very few women ask for help. The percentage of women who ask for help is lower than that of men. So then I invited Claudia, who is my psychologist to this day, and my partner in the collective, and she is watching us right now, and also Dee, who has also been a recovering alcoholic for almost 12 years now. And we created the collective basically wanting to build a bridge to show our faces, as you very well do through your Instagram account, and to emerge from anonymity and send the message to say, look, we are recovering, we looked for help, life is possible without alcohol, right? I am a happy woman without alcohol. I do everything I want to do, everything. I'm not the type of alcoholic who stays home. I do everything I want to because I don't need to drink anymore. I don't want to drink because my life is good with no alcohol. So we created social media accounts, an Instagram account, myself, Claudia, and Dee. We founded the collective on February 20, and we went on Instagram and said, hey, we are alcoholics and we are looking for other women who are interested. And that is how we found each other, right? It was through a recommendation by another woman. And I saw you guys and just thought, they are so like me. They showed their faces to actually help break the stigma, right? Exactly. And to talk about something that even turned to the name of our life, which is alcohol is a drug. Because people forget that alcohol is also a drug. It's just legal. Exactly. And to show how alcohol is a terrible drug. Well, I was watching the life of the guys from Bill and Bobby from the theater play, and this girl called me asking for help. She said, I would like to ask for help on behalf of my sister because she's drinking hand sanitizer and mixing it with meds. And I used to do that. I didn't drink hand sanitizer, but I drank a bottle of whiskey and combined it with antidepressants, tranquilizers, anti-allergic drugs, remedies for pain, muscle relaxants, everything. I made a cocktail. So that is very serious. I mean, people die. It's more than 3 million people who die of alcoholism worldwide. And we really need to talk about it. Our collective, which you are part of, and we love you. Thank you. Grazie. I love you too, and I'm very grateful, but I have to move on to the next guest. Can you forgive me? Of course. Say the name of the collective's Instagram account so people can check it out. It's at alcoolismo_feminino, and we're in this together. Bye bye. Sorry about the connection problem, okay? Don't worry about it. Goodbye.
Now, I'm gonna give the floor to Duca. Grazi spoke about the matter of living a life, a happy life without alcohol. Now I'm gonna talk to Duca, who is a comedian, children's book author, and a recuperating alcoholic. And he has a great story, and is a very happy person, very interesting person. People think that comedians, they're smiling all the time, but he does go through his struggles, and he's been sober for many, many years. Right, Duca? Hey, thank you, Lu. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was listening to Graziella speak, and of course, we identify with a lot of things, and I've been clean for 16 years. It's going to be 17 years this year. I'm an alcoholic, drug addict, and thank God I'm clean now. And if I wasn't clean, I was not going to be here. And how do you see this people minimizing the effects of alcohol? Tell us a little bit where alcohol took you, because alcohol is also a drug, you know, and which is also the subject of our life. Alcohol to me is not just a drug, it's the worst drug of all, because it's everywhere, and it's even in the church. You see the priests, they're drinking wine, and people don't understand. They don't know how many alcoholic priests there are out there in the world. It's a lot. And so alcohol took me to try to kill myself and lose my life and lose everything, materially speaking, spiritually speaking. And I was able to conquer things back little by little. And on December 6th of 2003, I tried to commit suicide by jumping off of a building. I started drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I was using other drugs, and I was freaking out. And at 10 p.m., I tried to jump off of a building, but luckily somebody was able to restrain me, and I didn't jump. I didn't die. So the next day, I woke up. I was like, I'm going to seek help. And I wasn't living with my parents anymore. I was living with my grandma. And my parents went out looking for me at Jurujuba, which is a psychiatric hospital, because people told them that I had lost it, and I was freaking out, and I had, and they looked for me in police stations and the morgue, and I was in the street still, drinking still, and all messed up. My face was all weird and messed up, and people asked me, what's going on with you? And I'll tell them, I'm just saying goodbye to this life, you know? And I got home, and Mom hugged me, and I told him, hey, either you commit me or you're going to bury me. So on December 8th of 2003, I was committed to a rehab clinic where I stayed for 44 days, and which is where I started to live, really, because I was a good person. I discovered that I am a good person. I'm not a scoundrel, a shameless person, a thug. I have a condition, and a lot of people have that condition. And a lot of people, like Graziella was saying, they are in denial, which is the main thing. Oh, not me. And I used to think like this also. I was like, oh, no, not me. All I do is alcohol, marijuana, ecstasy, and LSD. I don't have any problems with drugs. And so the problem was when it runs out. Yeah. The problem is when it runs out. Yeah. So I saw Graziella talking about it, and I drank rubbing alcohol myself. I found myself in very dire straits. And it's that thing, the recuperating alcoholic is a wonderful thing, but an active alcoholic is just a sad thing. I remember the OLO I used to do. You know what OLO is? Is others leftovers. And I used to look for, I didn't have any money anymore. I didn't know how to speak anymore, not even Portuguese, or didn't even know my name. And so I went to other people's leftovers and people's cans that were left over. I would get the can and I would drink with whatever was inside, with cigarette butts, with ashes. And there was also a famous saying among us drunks that drinking leftovers with cigarette ashes on it, it gives you a bigger high, and it's just sad. But luckily, there was still time left for me to be able to find life. And like in this quarantine, what I see, like everybody is just drinking a lot and really heavily, and I see that like once the quarantine is over, the AA groups will be packed, because who's left? Like in the quarantine, it's only you are left, and like couples are splitting. A lot of things are happening because there's no more the exterior world. There's only the interior that is active now. Man, you're screwed. You're done. And that's the thing. And today, and like, of course, here at home, we don't live a Roman Rockwell painting. But I miss being in a AA meeting a lot. And there's some online meetings, but there's just too many things online, and I like offline. And so the thing that I'm doing the most is surfing, because either you surf or you freak out, so I need to put this endorphin in me, and I've been able to do that, but it's sad, and to see that people are going heavy at it, in drugs and alcohol. And like, I don't have any problems anymore talking about it. The effects of alcohol is quite dismissed and minimized by people. People say, oh, I'm just drinking during the quarantine, and after the quarantine, I'm not going to drink at home anymore. And unfortunately, I don't think this is going to happen. I think it's going to be one of the after effects. And many people, alcoholism will, start on them. I think that, did you have the habit of drinking at home when you were active? Or you just drink socially? Oh, no. I was the guy that used to hide beers inside the produce drawer in my fridge when there was a party at home. Like, we're running out of beers. I'm going to hide some for me because I cannot run out, like we talked earlier. What if it runs out, So I became the seesaw guy. Whenever I sat down, people stood up and left. And now it's different too, because no one invites me to go anywhere because I don't use anything anymore. I don't drink or whatever. And they don't understand, because it's so hard for a person to understand that the other person has a problem with alcohol, because everywhere you go, you're offered a drink. It doesn't matter where you have a barbecue. Hey, would you like a beer? Because, we need to know that we cannot. And that's the thing. I take my first step every day. I lost. I cannot do it anymore. So you try to tell people, tell it once, hey, no, I'm not drinking now, try to play it off. And he's like, no, I'm not drinking. And they all keep going. No, just one beer. And you keep trying to warn them, no, I'm not drinking. So and then you get the limit, you go, hey, I cannot drink. I'm an alcoholic. If I start drinking, the fun is over. Everything here will be over, because it's a monster that it was, created inside of me, and it's, it's here, and that's the truth. And our monsters are inside of us. There's nowhere for them to go, but they're dormant. That's the truth. Because that's the thing of character flaws. Character flaws, I have tons, but they don't come out. And drugs made them all come out. And, like stealing, cheat, and all those things. that people think that inactive, they think it's just normal. But once you're clean, you go, oh no, this is terrible. You're like, oh, then you have to write, oh, I'm sorry to many, many people. And now that you're recuperating and you're a father, as a father, how do you see this matter of alcohol? Because exactly this is present everywhere, in church or even at a baby shower that became an adult drinking shower. And what do you tell your daughters? What do you usually tell them? I remember when I was beginning, I would go to the NA meetings and have some people there. They were starting to go through their phase with kids going in their teenage years and starting to use alcohol and so on and so forth. And I have 2 teenage daughters, but they're practically grown women already. And I try to warn them and show them on my example, and I warn them that there's no happy ending, and I cannot get into their life too much. And I try just try to warn, because I know where I went, and I tell them, and they know, and nothing is hidden from the girls. But what I tell them is just to be careful all the time, because I don't know if it's in the gene, in the blood, or anything like this. I've seen my eldest daughter. She told me that they drugged her drink once, and my youngest daughter, the 18-year-old one, because I hope now, because it's hard, it's hard to control them. They're all over the place all the time. And today, how can I say, perhaps because I have the approach of the addict that I am, very soon, if I identify and notice that the condition is creeping in, I go, hey, I'll, step up and go, hey, let's go to a meeting with me, because I've been noticing that it's derailing things now. And, but now it's still okay. Because, I gave up on my life. I gave up on fighting for things in life. And that's the thing. Once you're clean, things happen, and develop. When I was clean, I published 4 books by myself. And I'm on TV, and I do comedy. I have my show, which is the Two of Me concert that I have, which I talk about the addiction side and the comedy side, which was a great thing. And I was in both sides. Yeah, art is, it is a great vehicle of information, of prevention. Yeah, because people see me, because my character on TV is a dope head. And because people think my character is me, and the dope head was inside of me. And I have, first-hand knowledge and experience on the subject, a lot of experience, to do this character, but it's not inside of me anymore. It's just a character. So in real life, people go, hey, Tuca, come on, let's go there, do this and that. And they're like, no, not me. I don't do anything anymore. Because if I do, I will die. And that's the truth. And one thing that I learned inside the AA Brotherhood, people, be first arrived there, and somebody there getting a chip of however many years and looking of a newcomer and say, hey, if you mess up, man, you're gonna die, either by suffering or being in the wrong place. And I identify a lot, because I think I'm not gonna be in the wrong place, but I'm gonna suffer again. And man, I don't want to suffer anymore. I've suffered way too much, my God. And that's what I try to tell my daughters. It's not that I suffer way too much, and I tell them this. And it's that pain in your soul. It's not a physical pain. It's pain, in your soul, and which is the worst one of all. And this pain makes you, give up on living. And this happens with the introduction of drugs. And because in the beginning, everything's wonderful, but, right afterwards, it's like everything downhill. You see, I went to speak at a rehab clinic once, and I was asked if I had drank alcohol from a gas pump, like from a gas station, like a gas pump. And I told him, not yet. And because it's the not yet condition, because I had not drank alcohol from a gas pump. But yet, but I had drank rubbing alcohol. Duca, unfortunately, I am powerless about the time situation. I need to give the floor to my other guests. I put you and Grazi first because you guys have first-hand experience. And now I'm going to give the floor to a psychologist. And she's an expert, and she'll be able to talk about risk factors, like genetic factors, like we mentioned earlier. And she'll be able to talk about technical aspects about alcohol, which is also a drug. Thank you very much, Duca. Hey, follow along with us, okay? Okay. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, now I'm going to invite the psychologist Sabrina Pressman, who is a specialist in drug addiction. Let me find Sabrina.
So I'm going to call Roberto. And once Sabrina is back, she'll conclude. So now I'm going to call Roberto Flores. Roberto Flores is one of the oldest counselors in chemical dependency in Brazil. Hello, Roberto Flores. How are you? Hi, how are you? Fine. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for accepting my invitation. We know each other only online. And so the floor is yours. Subject is alcohol is a drug. I think you have a lot to share with us. So, floor is yours. Thank you. So, all yours, and thank you very much for accepting the invitation. It's a pleasure being here. I'd like to say that I admire you virtually. I mean, I don't know you in person, but I follow you on the social networks, and I think you do a great work. So tell us a little bit about your professional path, how you perceive alcohol. Yes, I will. I somewhat have a script along those lines here. Well, first I'd like to say that I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic. I've been sober 36 years, 2 months and counting. 1 month and a half after that, I was invited to undergo a training program. And so I was invited by the owner of the clinic where I was last committed. And so he asked if I was interested in becoming a counselor. I accepted. And it was just very important. For 9 months, I think this was April 1st, 1986. That was when I first signed a contract as a counselor, and that's very same clinic that actually saved my life. And from there on, I started my professional path alongside my personal recovery, and this was everything to me. But when we talk about alcohol, it's also a drug. We need to understand that we live in a society that actually fosters a usage of alcoholic beverages in just about every sense. There's even an advertising law, and I think it's important to point this out here, which prohibits until a certain time of the day ads about distilled drinks. However, it doesn't include beer in that segment, as if beer wasn't also an alcoholic beverage. And something that startles me a lot, and I've witnessed this in last years, is just how much teenagers are drinking, and especially during Carnival. Here in Rio, I see entire groups of teenagers aged 12 to 16, sometimes 17, and getting very intoxicated, so drinking very heavily during this time of the year. And so this raises an issue. I mean, we live in a society that stimulates young people, and even ads are geared toward this age group, and I'm talking about alcoholic advertisers. And there is very little information that alcohol has in the organism. I've worked in nearly every rehab clinic in Rio de Janeiro. I have 36 years, actually 34 years of professional expertise as a counselor in addiction, as a coordinator of family programs in these rehab clinics where I worked. Currently, I am a partner at a clinic in Araras in the state of Rio, where we carry out work that is geared towards mental health, and more specifically to help addicts. So I have considerable experience in this field, and as well as people I've helped individually, in addition to what I perceive in these groups that I attend, and AA groups and self-help groups. And Grazi, in the beginning, she said that alcohol is a disease of denial. And so much more than alcoholism is maybe the disease that we most studied as a dependency. Chemical dependency is a denial disease, and alcohol is oftentimes used as an escape by people that hit rock bottom using drugs. However, using other types of drugs other than alcohol, but also a bit of alcohol. It's very common for addicts that use cocaine a lot, who want to stop using cocaine, and they think there's no problem in having a beer or smoking a joint once in a while. And we can say that this is part of this denial that we're talking about. It's one of these facets of denial. So I choose one drug that will take me to rock bottom, and however the other drugs are no problem for me. That's what an addict thinks. But the problem isn't the substance. What we need to understand about alcoholism is the problem isn't the alcohol itself. It lies in the person. The problem lies in us. So if I have a sip, I may even schedule myself. I'll have a sip, but I am not able to schedule myself to stop after having that first sip. I cannot stop drinking after my first dose. So this is interesting to point out, because the co-founders of AA, they recognized this way back, and they created a motto in AA which has saved lives across the globe, which is avoid the first sip. So the problem isn't that bottle that I downed. It is instead the first sip, which kicked off a compulsive behavior, and that individuals unable to stop by themselves. So addicts or alcoholics, they are exactly that person, unable to stop by themselves. They are always forced to stop, whether by premature death or a suicide or an accident, or by gunfire, let's say as a result of criminal activity, or sometimes, let's say, family intervention, which oftentimes happens. The family needs to intervene, that relative, in order to save his life, because he's risking his life. So we need to take this all into consideration. So in addition to living in a society that stimulates usage of alcoholic drinks, there's also a distorted view on drugs. I think it's interesting. There's a myth, I really do consider this a myth, that states that every dependent is intelligent, sensible, and whatnot. And I'd say yes, to a certain extent. Because in these groups that I attend, there's a saying that we have written in the blackboard over there, that alcohol is a drug. So I mean, we really do need to recall for ourselves that alcohol is in fact a drug. So you can't have a first sip of an alcoholic beverage. That's where the problem lies. I won't deny that there are a lot of intelligent people who are addicts. A lot of us, when we start our recovery process, we show ourselves to be brilliant professionals in the work that they engage in, and that's great. Creativity is many times related to the use of certain substance. However, we realize that it actually lies within us. So these are important things to note. So sometimes people question, what are the probable causes of alcoholism? Well, I'd say that there's so many causes, a wide range, that leads someone to become an addict or an alcoholic. Biological factors, social factors, sometimes there's a precondition, a genetic condition, environmental factors. In a country like Brazil, where there's huge social inequality, where many times an individual's only, let's say, leisure or recreation is to drink, and we see this in the end of work days, on Fridays, for instance, bars are packed. People drinking because that's where they are able to somehow vent and unwind, because their wage can't afford anything else. And I'm not justifying this conduct, I'm just posing a fact that I think that is interesting here. When I started my recovery, and this was in April 1984, a lot of people here weren't even born. You weren't even born back then. So this was already a reality back then. It was already something that we needed to consider. And I remember just how many times as a bachelor at 31, and I recall this vividly, I questioned myself, so how do I have relationships now without having a drug in the middle? And the drug that I was referring to was precisely alcohol. So will I set a date with a woman without inviting her to have a beer with me, for instance? What if she asks me, do you drink? You don't drink? How do I deal with that issue? So this is very important to me. And I remember that I had a number of experiences that were actually quite funny, while others weren't that funny. Sometimes it was a first date that would just stay at that because I felt a need to be just fully honest and open, and I tell my date about my background, my 17 years of addiction, of how I hit rock bottom, and so many of these dates would just run off terrified. So I said to myself, I need to adapt, until I stumbled upon AA literature, and they made some recommendations that I thought were useful. One of them worked really well for me in these first dates, was that I had an allergy to anything that was alcohol related. And that was quite interesting, because from there on I said, well, this is just like someone has an allergy to shrimp, for instance. They can't eat anything that has even traces of shrimp, or else they'll break into hives or have allergies, even their throat may close. So from there on it became easier for me, for people also to accept me as they knew me more. I was able to open up a bit more. And let's say I was successful in these approaches as a bachelor. But I started working early on. What I mean is, I was just 2 years sober when I went for the first time. I started working as a counselor in a rehab center. And it was just frightening for me because just a while before, I was actually a patient. I was on the other side. And I don't know how it's for you, but for me, it was just terrifying. Because the first time I stumbled upon a group of patients in the rehab clinic, but I was actually the therapist. So it was just, everything was very strange, just a bizarre situation. Many times during a session, I just felt like running away. However, I was able to kind of fake it. I think I was able to not convey my facial expressions of fear and concern that I was feeling. I remember actually once where I was in the clinic, where I started my recovery as well as my first experience as a professional. And the coordinator of that clinic wanted to watch a session. So she wanted to do a live supervision. And that was just flat out the worst workday of my entire life. That person evaluating me, I was just very tense and choked up. So that was just terrible. I remember I left at 8 p.m. From the clinic. My shifts used to be from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day. And I would just run off to a AA session because I needed to somehow express what I had kept inside, express my feelings. And of course, always upholding the entire secrecy that this treatment requires. To earn someone's trust is difficult. It's a difficult thing to do. And I'm proud of that as a professional. I mean, I never mixed things, my roles as a therapist and as a recovering addict. And that's because I had also great teachers. One of the great teachers I had was John Burns of Vila Serena, president of Vila Serena. He's still a lecturer there. And he is a person I'm very grateful to. Ana Lúcia Fontoura was a coordinator, one of the first coordinators actually at Vila Serena, psychologist. She was my supervisor throughout my entire academic studies. Cid Merlino, psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, who was my boss at CREDEC, where I was honored to implement the entire coordination program, where I was also the first coordinator. This is at Campo Grande in Rio de Janeiro. So these are people that somehow guided me, pointed me to a direction. In spite of having different backgrounds, John, maybe I think I relate to him the most because he's also a recovering alcoholic, and I say this here because it's something that he publicly acknowledges. But both Ana Lúcia Fontoura as a psychologist and Cid Merlino as a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, living with them daily, people in these fields of psychology, psychiatry, and nursing as well. Also worth recalling that back then, one of the leaders of Vila Serena was Roy Hudson Pena. He was a nurse, and nowadays he's a psychologist. He spearheaded a treatment group there. So these people really pointed me to a direction, and I was able to be successful in my career. I know that my time is running out, so Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This has been great, but now I really have to call. I just wanted to thank you. Oh, thank you. You talked about people who taught you, who you're very grateful to. I want you to know that even though we don't know each other, I learn a lot through your posts. And thank you very much. As soon as this is over, let's arrange to finally meet in person, okay? Yes, for sure. Let's have a coffee together. Okay. Let's do that. Okay, see you now. Take care. See you. Thank you. You're welcome.
So now I'm going to give the floor to the psychologist Sabrina Prejman. Roberto was talking about people who were really important in his journey. And Sabrina is a professional to whom I'm really grateful. She has taught me a lot. And I think she's a great person. And besides being a great professional, it's important that you're a good human being, a good professional. So I'm gonna give the floor to Sabrina. I apologize to you, but my phone is running out of battery. Hi, Sabrina. Good evening. Welcome. And we're going to move on talking until 8:15, all right? Because we're a little late. So, Sabrina, I'm going to give you the floor. I believe you have listened to the other guests because our topic today is alcohol is also a drug. And you, as a professional, I would like you to bring a more technical vision regarding the risk factors and protection factors and any other ideas that you find important. Look, I don't know if I'm gonna be so well disciplined like the others to speak by myself, so I'm gonna have you talk to me as well. But I think this is a very important topic related to alcohol. As everyone has said already, Roberto, a kiss to you, Milena Freire, you as well, and Eliana too. She was one of the best teachers I had at college. We may have an idea related to drugs, illegal drugs especially, and people understand chemical dependency as one who is a cocaine user, a marijuana user, or even a crack user. And people don't really pay attention to alcohol, especially due to the easy access, the availability, and that's also something I heard people saying on the previous talks. It's present around kids, it's present around their families. And we're back. I kept talking. You were frozen to me, but the comments were coming up. You couldn't hear me, could you? No, I couldn't. But now we're back. Roberto, were you listening to me? Please confirm. Yeah. So it's something important for us to reflect on is that the legal drugs, especially tobacco and alcohol, due to the fact that they're available and they are of easy access, there's a social perception that the harms are smaller because you see everyone around you consuming it and it's part of many of our rituals. For example, when you go celebrate New Year's Eve, what do people say? Let's make a toast. Let's buy a bottle of champagne. People don't even think about the place, they think about the champagne. Man, I don't believe you're not gonna drink anything. So one of the main risk factors that we see related to abusive consumption of alcohol is how much society sees alcohol as something not harmful. It's a low risk detection. And even a bit worse, it is a perception that generates a positive expectation for the consumption. It's linked to pleasure situations, to well-being. You will be left out of the group if you don't drink. That's when we can start talking about some other issues. Firstly is that the beginning of the consumption is in the teenagehood, in the end of childhood and beginning of teenagehood. So we could start talking about a type of pediatric disease. For example, I see my daughter, she's 13, and I already see her friends thinking that it's okay to drink. Going to these parties, what they call resenhas, going to the condominium resenhas, there's always somebody with a vodka bottle. It's usually an older boy, not over 18, but older. And he gets it, I don't know, from his parents' house. It's easy to find, it's accessible. So it gave her a perception that it's okay. So firstly, there's an early consumption when the teenager brain is still taking shape. So it makes it even more grave. The dependency potential is even worse. Not only on the chemical part, but also the earlier you start, the fewer connections you have without alcohol. Then you notice that all the social occasions, the pleasure occasions are related to alcohol. I don't know, Lou, how old were you when you started drinking? 16 or 17? And was there pressure? I quit when I was 28. You quit early. And was there pressure from your group of friends when you were 17, 18? Did they drink? Well, the first time I drank was with my parents' authorization. And I believe it was just a repetition of a pattern in my family. There was never that story of being badly influenced, because even today, when I think about it, I think I was the bad influence. So there was no pressure from somebody else. It was just something from the environment around me. So let me tell you something. The teenager is always a bad influence. They're in that phase that they want to try things and do different things. So it's not you. That was part of the deal. But you mentioned something important. It is a drug that is consumed inside people's houses. It's permitted. So if we want to talk about the main risk factors, we have this association of pleasurable situations. There's the consumption inside people's houses, inside the parties, carnival, New Year, that concept of a drink after dinner for some relaxation. So this is very inherent in our society, and there's easy access and even low prices in Brazil. And even some places there are some types of drinks that you can buy cheaper than food. So it's there, it's cheap, it's easier, there's less prejudice, for example. And maybe I could drink it with my parents if I were a teenager. But if I said, I'm gonna snort some cocaine here, my parents would say, no, of course not. And that only happens in extreme situations if the parents are chemical dependents. But alcohol is okay. So besides these factors, we see a series of other social contexts in which alcohol is a well-seen drug. And Roberto was talking about a topic that I love, which is advertisements. And here we're talking about a perspective from a patient, from a person who gets sick from it. But we see a whole industry behind it, an industry that incentivizes the consumption with a picture that it is positive, it is good. So there's hundreds of ads with the most beautiful actors, the most well-succeeded people, sports people, and that is all a lie. Because nobody gets jacked drinking beer. Yeah, nobody gets jacked. But, well, you buy that idea. So if you're sad, if you're upset, you say, well, I want to feel like that. And if you think about a music festival, for example, Rock in Rio, Lollapalooza, Peão de Boiadeiro, it doesn't matter if it's rock or sertanejo or country music. Who sponsors these events? Well, alcohol industries. And anytime you look around, you see there's a person selling drinks in that in-delivery thing. There's drinking stalls as well. You don't even have to go to a line. There are collectible cups and so on. And during the Olympics, for example, I wanted to do a collection of those cups, and I wanted to buy only the cup, and they said I couldn't. I had to buy the drink. And I said, well, I'm gonna throw it away. Can I have only the cup? And they said no. Anyways, and you see those ads on Instagram and all of those digital influencers tagging those drinks there, those companies. And we know that it all started as something natural, especially during these lives in the quarantine. And it became a huge business because you see the artist, the singer, whatever, with a fridge beside them, basically inviting you to drink together. And the other day I was watching a live from a psychologist. It was something different from all of these musical lives. So I said, well, I'm going to unwind and watch this live. So the whole beginning of her live was her making a toast, drinking some wine, and what a pleasurable night it was going to be with her wine. Well, and I was watching her, and she's actually a sexologist. And I was watching her talking about it, but with a drink. And I mean, everyone knows that alcohol is horrible for sex. It's not good, both for men and women. There's no man who has a good sexual performance after drinking. And there's many consequences of drinking alcohol, both in women and men. Hi, Gisele, Aleluia, welcome. I'm gonna stay here to watch you. So again, when we think about these factors, we see the main factors, which are the risk ones, and we have to be aware. Before you cut me here, because of my time, I'm gonna use this end here to say, no, I was just watching the time because Instagram can cut us. So something called my attention. But sorry, I was late. Yeah, our live was supposed to start at 8:25 and I was 10 minutes late. I'm sorry. So we were talking about the main risk factors, but we also have to think how we can build protection factors. Today, for example, what we're doing is a protection factor. So let's talk openly. Let's inform people. Let's inform society. Let's get what science says. Get the experience of people who have been through that. People from all ages. We've seen young people who quit drinking early. So we can build protection factors. And for this, we have to start working towards public policies, for example. And Roberto was talking about some policies. He was talking about the prohibition of advertisements with alcohol. And we see the example of beer, because beer is not even considered alcohol. Then we have to think about policies that protect our kids and teenagers and our population so that the society can change as a whole. Good evening. The live went down because we went over time. But I'm gonna wait for our guest to come back so she can do her final considerations. And then we can move on to our next guest. All right? So let's wait. Let's wait for Sabrina Presman. She was doing her final considerations about the importance of public policies related to alcohol. Now she's back. She's going to do her final considerations. Then we can move on to the psychologist Gisele Aleluia. Sabrina, I'm going to call you here. Hello, we're back. Hi, Sabrina. You were speaking about the importance of public policies for the construction of protection factors. For us to be able to create a society that understands the harms related to alcohol consumption. The dry law, or lei seca, is a good example. It raised awareness of the population. There was a decrease of drink and drive accidents in those states that implemented this law. Another policy that is very well succeeded in the countries that implemented it is tax raise. Tax raise on products, on alcoholic products. And with so much harm related to alcohol, it's unbelievable that our state, our government still gives subsidies to the alcohol industries. So one of the main strategies that we know that work is tax raise. So I'm gonna use another example of a legal drug, which is tobacco. You know, that's something I've dedicated myself for many years to study, and that I think we have to learn from this experience to discuss alcohol and debate alcohol. Because tobacco 20 years ago was fancy, was posh, was glamorous, it was linked to sports, to social issues, and so on. But nowadays, if you light a cigarette in public, what happens? Everyone walks away. Yeah, you're not welcome anymore. People will tell you not to smoke around them, and they start talking about passive smoking and so on. So, about alcohol, we're still struggling to have football stadiums without alcohol so that they become family places. And another policy that we have to try and implement as soon as possible is the prohibition to double drinks. The happy hours that encourage people to drink a huge amount of alcohol in a short amount of time. And we know that most of the problems related to alcohol is linked to binge drinking, which is drinking a lot in a short amount of time. So it is something important that I believe it's essential for us to debate here, is that it's up to us to be responsible socially and individually. And to think, for example, that maybe I don't have issues with alcohol, so there's no problem drinking at home during the quarantine, in front of my kids, in front of my family. Is it what I want them to learn? That at the moments I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling upset, it is drinking how I solve it? Yeah, sometimes we spend our time and energy talking about the government and so on, but we have to start thinking about our attitudes and start promoting healthy environments, a healthy generation. And also, even in our workplace, the things we do, this is up to us to inform. For example, I seen you, Luciana, if you watch a report or any news that has some misinformed information, you go after it, you look for the sources and so on, because you want to change it. So there is an important point of raising awareness of people, because they could have a misconception of what alcoholism is. I had an example this week. I think the doctor is even watching us. I sent this patient to her, and this patient was talking to me. She said, well, I don't really know if my brother is an alcoholic because he doesn't drink every day. He even stops drinking for a few days, but then he goes back to drinking. And many times this perception, beside this whole social context and external society and even internal society, the society at our homes, we tend to think that that is not alcoholism, that it has to be like waking up shaking, or even a person who drinks in public until they drop. So being able to inform, being able to clarify some points to the population and support some ideas and causes, being it with policies about informing populations of the harms of it, also debating the benefits that advertisement promises, being aware that the digital influencers are paid to do what they do. They are sponsored by these alcohol industries. So we have to do our part. So thank you very much for helping me with this. Don't worry, don't worry. So I'm gonna wrap it up using a quote that I really like. It's from Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and I've been saying it all the time. She had this quote where she said, "What I do is a drop in the ocean, but if I didn't do it, the ocean would be smaller." So I think that any initiative, even if it seems like a small one, for example, I'm not a big influencer, but it will reach someone. I'm sure about it. So if I reach one person, I'll be happy. So thank you for accepting my invitation. But I'm gonna have to wrap it up here because I'll have to start another live with Giselle here. I know she's watching us, but I'm not gonna have to end this one and start another one because we're doing separate lives and maybe people want to watch another one separately. So I'm gonna finish this one here. Thank you once again, and I invite you to watch our next live with Gisele. Yeah, I'll be back. Kisses, people. Kisses, Sabrina. Thank you very much. Bye bye.